And a good Tuesday afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Groveport Madison High School for week 4 of the high school football season. We're here for our weekly Facebook Live. I'm Dave Purpura, along with Jarrod, Ulrey, and our guest to begin the program today is Cruisers coach Bryan Schoonover. Good to see you, Coach. How are you?
Appreciate you having me.
Hey. We're glad to be here. Glad to be here. Cruisers getting ready for a game on Friday night against Pickerington Central that we played here on this field. It's a regular series, going back to the days when you guys were in the same OCC division. But first off, 3-0. You went to 3-0 last week with that win over Kilbourne. Tell us a little bit of what worked for you guys in that game and what have been some of the themes overall here early in the season.
I think for us, we've just talked about being a day-to-day team and being somebody that, at practice today, we're going to make sure that we're, taking care of what we need to take care of today. Fixing mistakes, making sure we're working our technique, little things like that. And I think that's kind of what's carried over thus far into our games. We still got a lot of stuff to work on, but I thought our special teams play went well. I thought that we had a big return the second half that kind of opened it up to 28-7. But other than that, it's been a team effort throughout. So we've been pretty happy thus far.
Coach, it's not been all that long since you got. 2 years ago you were 0-10.
Yeah.
Last year you improved to 5-5. What's this journey been like for you guys the last couple of years?
It's just been a lot of hard work, and our players have bought into what we've been trying to do. And that's the big thing is we never really lost focus of our goal. We knew 2 years ago we were playing a lot of young guys, and we knew that we were probably going to take our lumps a little bit, but those guys stuck with it, and off-season work and prep and all those things have gone well for those boys, and I'm just real happy with their commitment, and they never lost faith, and stuck with it the whole time, and now they're kind of seeing some rewards from it.
And your strengths have been on both sides of the ball. I know I was out here last week doing a story about your defense.
Yeah.
You've been able to establish some strength on both sides. Is this about as well balanced a team as you were hoping for here early?
I don't know. It's a little early to tell. We've had some big plays on offense, and we're able to hit some things on special teams. Our defense has played really well and been getting to the football, I think, but for us it's kind of hard to tell. We haven't had that many offensive plays. I think in week 2 we only had 29 with the older guys, and so we haven't been on offense that much. So at this point, I'd just say we're a work in progress.
Okay. Well, Coach, I know you get to play Pickerington Central on Friday here. Some of those guys over there like Dave Bristol, Brian Halfley.
Yeah.
I know you know a lot of those guys.
Yeah.
What are some of your thoughts just about the matchup in general?
I think that we've been playing Pickerington since 1981, so it's been a long time. It's been 28 years since we've had a victory over them. But the one thing I'll say about them is they're always well disciplined. They're well coached. They do a great job of prep. I think that when you look on film, they're a tough, hard-nosed team that they'll play anybody, and that's pretty obvious by how their schedule's set up. So it's going to be a test for us on Friday, and we're excited about an opportunity to play against one of the teams, not top teams in the state, but also in the region. And those guys, Half and Bristol and Jay, and all those, they do just a tremendous job with their program, and so. Nothing but good things to say to them, and we respect what they've done and what they're doing right now. So we're prepping as hard as we can, and when we get into play, we're gonna come out and play on Friday.
All right, Coach. Well, hey, we will let you get back to practice.
Appreciate
Thank you, Bryan.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it. Got it.
Thank you.
Cruisers coach Bryan Schoonover. You're going to hear them practicing out behind us here for the next 10 minutes as long as we're here. Coach mentioned that this is a series they've played for now. This would be the 39th, I guess, consecutive year. Or even if there's been a space or two in there, I think it's a 29-8 Pickerington Central lead. Or what are some of the things? You cover the Tigers on a regular basis. What are some of the things you've noticed in a start that has been really challenging but successful for them?
For Pickerington Central,
yes.
Well, they've actually been running the ball really well this year. Yes, they always have. They can always run the ball pretty well, but Nick Mosley has really gotten off to a very good start for them. Obviously, they've got the experienced quarterback in Demetri Crenshaw. And, of course, they've got great athletes like Lorenzo Stiles Jr. Mm-hmm. He's off to a great start. I believe he had something like over 100 and some yards receiving last week. And like Coach Schoonover was saying, they've played great teams. And the teams that they've played are they're out of state, so it's kind of like, well, what do you know about them? Just from a lot of the research I've done, these teams are all going to be playoff teams probably in their own states.
who have been successful in the past as well, and they seem to be stringing that along. And Coach mentioned, I had to chuckle when we talked about the limited number of offensive plays. Well, that tells you exactly how productive they've been with that number of offensive plays. I mean, they put 56 up on Hamilton Township, including a kickoff return for a touchdown. They put 31 up on Westerville North. Last week, I think they put 42 or 41 up on Worthington-Kilbourne in a 4-touchdown win. So that tells you, they've been able to take advantage of their chances. They've got a really solid running game. And the defensive front, if you look online tonight or tomorrow, I've got a story kind of based on that, on the front seven, and talking about their whole defense. That tells you, I mean, this isn't a fluke. They've been opportunistic, and they've played very well.
Sure. Actually, one of the closest games in this rivalry in the last 28 years took place in 2007. I did a little bit of research about that earlier this week. Le'Veon Bell was a sophomore on that team for Groveport. Pickering and Central ended up beating him 15-9 in 2 overtimes. Most of the matchups since that time have not been close.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen Friday? I mean, Groveport's got to come out and be ready to give him a good shot right away.
130 all-purpose yards. I think it might have been 129 for Le'Veon Bell on Monday Night Football last night. Some more important Region 3 games that we'll talk about. I mean, both of these teams are in Region 3.
There's a lot of great games this week, too.
Yeah.
There really are.
Well,
we have so many games to talk about.
And that Liberty-Davidson is the first one. They're both in Region 3 now because Liberty came back down. I know we've talked about this before. Both of them come in at 3-0. Olentangy Liberty, reading your preview, is averaging, almost 300 yards a game on the ground. Davidson is doing what it does best. They only have thrown the ball 3 times all season. But boy, I mean, what's that old term? Slobber knocker, I think you hear about wrestling. So, I mean, this could be a really good game, one of many good games this week.
Well, one of the things about Olentangy Liberty that I really like so far is that they've been able to pass the ball pretty well, run the ball pretty well. Corbin Parrish, he's been solid at quarterback. I mean, that was maybe one of the question marks coming in. You're never going to, right now, the way that Steve Hale has this program, the level that he has it at right now, there's probably, for the next several years, they're probably going to have great linemen. They're probably going to have a lot of guys on the outside some speedy guys on the outside. But at a position like quarterback, I mean, that was kind of a question mark this year. And Corbin Parrish has come in, he's been very solid. And then, I mean, their defense has been great too. I mean, 35-0 over Glenville. That's impressive.
Yeah, it's nothing to shake your head at.
That's impressive.
And I might have botched a stat, but it was Davidson has had no passes in 2 of their first 2 games.
Right.
Now, maybe they have only thrown the ball 3 times. Would anybody be shocked at that?
That's right.
So, but it is 2
times.
out of 3. Yeah. Absolutely. Another one, this goes a little farther north, Dublin Coffman, which is in Region 2. This is the game I will be covering on Friday night. They come in at 3-0 off a rivalry win over Jerome, and they look at an Olentangy team that's 2-1, has played much better in the last 2 weeks since losing to Darby in their opener. They bounced back, routed Miamisburg, had a closer game against Holland Springfield up in Toledo last week, but still won by 3 touchdowns. So this is a Braves team. Trent Maddox at quarterback. They've got some good guys going between running back and linebacker. Trying to find themselves, and this has been a competitive rivalry with Coffman over the last few years.
I mean, Coffman is obviously off to a great start this year. They're 3-0, and they still haven't had Mike Drennan. So I'm not really sure what the status is of that, actually, to be honest with you. And whenever they get him back, I mean, that even adds another element. I mean, you got to figure he's got to be getting closer to being ready to return.
They're 3-0 for the 3rd year in a row, 4 times in the last 6 seasons. Now, the times that they haven't gone 3-0, they've played some pretty good teams, so there's nothing to shake their heads at
They've
there.
beat some good teams so far this year, too.
Yeah, absolutely. They opened with, I don't know if it was Clayton Northmont.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then of course they played Jerome last week.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on who they played in week 2, and I should know this. I don't, unfortunately. But and looking at Olentangy, this is also a good chance for them to get some valuable points. I know it's early in Region 7,
especially they're Division 2, so you get a Division 1 win. That'd be big.
Yeah, exactly. They're sitting 10th in the region. I can't even believe I'm saying it. We're only going into week 4, but kind of looking where everybody's standing at this point. Westerville South, another one of our area's undefeated teams. They are 3-0, and they travel to take on a 1-2 Upper Arlington team. Westerville South, and they've the name of the game kind of for them, among a lot of balanced play. Yeah, Michael Mansoray, 14 on the ground, another one receiving. They've got a lot of cylinders clicking well. I mean, he doesn't do that all by himself. They've had really good play up front, and you're looking at an Upper Arlington team that has had a pretty good schedule. They've lost to Reynoldsburg and Winton Woods, 2 of the better teams in the state and in the area.
There's a few of these type of matchups this week where you've got one team is off to this great start, like Westerville South is 3-0, and UA's only 1-2, but UA's played a much tougher schedule. And So Westerville South's going to really be challenged. There's a few of those type of matchups this week. I think we're gonna really learn a lot this week.
And another one of them, you fed really well into this one. Another Westerville school is 3-0, and that's Westerville Central. They take on Pickerington North, that's 1-2. Yeah, this one really intrigues me. Westerville Central obviously has played very well. They've averaged 65 points a game. They've outscored their opponents 195 to 13.
Right.
Those three opponents have been Whitehall, Gahanna, and Northland. They take on a Pickerington North team that might be starting to figure some things out. And the ever-familiar name Jack Sawyer stepped up and played yet another role last week. He was their quarterback when they got their first win of the year.
Well, and he has a little bit of experience at that role, just kind of in a backup role last year. I mean, he was served as backup quarterback. He really didn't get a lot of reps. But they just kind of figured, we got to get this guy the ball, and that's really the best way, is just to have it in his hands all the time. So.
Well, and I believe, I don't think I'm wrong about this, that he and Reed Hall of New Albany tied for our Player of the Week honors.
That's right.
That's how tight this vote was this week. And I know there were a couple other guys that were really close in there, and we'll mention Reed Hall in a minute. One of the battles of Dublin for the second week in a row, and this begins OCC Cardinal play, is Dublin Jerome at 2-1, coming off that loss to Coffman. Dublin Scioto at 1-2, coming off their first win of the year. That was at Whitehall. I liked what I saw from Scioto in week 2, even though they lost to New Albany. A couple mistakes cost him the game effectively. I think they could be a team that really could start getting it moving. I'm not picking a winner in this game at this moment, but they certainly are starting to get better, and Dublin Jerome is eager to bounce back from what happened last week.
Yeah, you'd have to think that they would be. These matchups are always really interesting, especially early in the year. I mean, you get a couple of the little community rivalry games. I mean, you got to love that. I mean, it's going to be pretty emotional 2 weeks in a row for Jerome. I mean, after they play Coffman, then you got to play Scioto. So.
Well, and we just came off the Hilliard round robin, as it were, with all three of those schools playing each other within a 3-week window. You wrote this preview this week. Gahanna fell to 0-3 with a loss to Hartley, but they come home to take on a New Albany team that's really rounding into form at 2-1. We mentioned Reed Hall a second ago. He rushed for 340 yards last week in their win out at Licking Heights. But you wrote, I mean, there are a lot of layers in this game, and it's always a good rivalry. In fact, the Gahanna has won every meeting up to this point.
Well, last year's game between these two teams probably was the best game I saw all of last season. Gahanna got a last-second touchdown, won 41-40. And it kind of, I mean, it was like a real key factor in them making the playoffs. Now this year, Gahanna's already off to an 0-3 start, but they've played, I mean, the teams they've played have been really tough.
What, Elder?
Yeah,
Coffman,
Elder,
Hartley,
and Hartley. I mean, you got three teams that are 3-0. So you got to figure they're going to be, they probably are probably as prepared as any team could possibly be for league play coming up in a couple weeks, and for a matchup like with a school that's pretty close by in New Albany.
Yeah, there's a rivalry there.
And of course, their coach, the coach of New Albany, is a Gahanna graduate.
Yep, Bubba Kidwell, who we are happy to report was back on the sidelines last week for their win over Licking Heights. Remember, he suffered a heart attack after the season opener. He watched their Week 2 game against Scioto from the press box, and then came back and was able to coach last week at Licking Heights. And then he's also in their Hall of Fame over at Gahanna.
That's right.
I believe. So glad to see Bubba back on the sidelines as well. New Albany and Gahanna, guess what region they're in as well? They're both in Region 3. So again, I mean, these games down the line could end up for a lot of positioning here.
Gahanna is really hungry right now. I mean, I know every team is, but they've got to really be feeling like our season's kind of on the line. I mean, they don't want to probably say that, but it's got to be in the back of your mind. You don't want to go. You don't want to go 0-4 because Westerville Central comes in Week 5, and they've been great. And then you've got the OCC Ohio schedule, and I believe they start with Pick Central Reynoldsburg. So, I mean, they could be staring at 1-5 or 2 and
if you don't get a win here soon.
If you don't get a win soon. So.
Absolutely. Another school you cover is Watterson. They come in at 3-0. They're going to host Dayton Carroll at Ohio Dominican. Dayton Carroll, coincidentally, a school that you saw in Week 1 when they lost to DeSales. What do you think about the Eagles right now? I mean, they've won 6 in a row going back to last season, averaging over 26 points a game. They seem to be really liking what they're doing under Coach Kennedy.
They're a great story. I mean, they've got this junior quarterback, Jake Hoying, son of Bobby Hoying. He's having a solid season for them. They're coming off this win on Friday night. Man, they really had to battle. I mean, there was a delay. The game didn't get over till 12:30. They needed a touchdown in the fourth quarter to win because they were playing Cuyahoga Falls Walsh Jesuit, which is, for some reason right now, they're really struggling. I believe they've lost like 18 games in a row. 0-10 last year, and they, but hey, they're probably really super hungry for a win, and they kind of saw an opportunity, and Watterson was like, no, we can't let you have that just yet. So they got to be feeling good to be 3-0.
I got home, I was unwinding after football, watching some late baseball games on Friday night, and I saw your tweet about 12:30. I said, yikes, they're still playing. I mean, that's just, the storms were a lot worse in northern Ohio than they were down here. I mean, I don't know that any games in our area were delayed per se, at least not in our immediate area.
Dayton Carroll was, in week 1 when I saw them against DeSales, they were fairly sloppy. I mean, there was a lot of turnovers and things in that game. Of course, they've won the last 2 weeks, so, you got to figure they're getting better, and yeah, I mean, we'll see what kind of a game they can give Watterson. That game will be held at Ohio Dominican. Yes. I don't know if you said that.
And that's, I believe, all the Eagles' home games are there this year. Right. A couple other games we definitely want to touch on before we get out of here. We would hate to not to mention that the CCL also has a couple other 3-0 teams, I should say. Hartley, and St. Charles, those are the other two. DeSales is 2-1. They take on a 3-0 team in Kettering-Alter. Kilbourne is 0-3. They're going to visit Thomas, that is 1-2. And a couple other ones you wanted to mention includes Walnut Ridge and Eastmore. Big battle to begin the City South schedule. Yeah,
Walnut Ridge is off to a great start. This might be their biggest challenge, is if they can get by Eastmore. This matchup has been really close the last few years.
Mm-hmm. And something I wrote about in 5 Things this week, and I know it was talked about on the radio as well. The winner of this is going to have to get some playoff points, because they are not going to have a ton of chances the rest of the way. Yeah. I mean, who knows how the rest of the schedule is going to develop, but the City South isn't the strongest it's ever been this year.
It's probably a little bit deeper than the City North.
Mm-hmm.
So there are, South is having a good season. They're off to 3-0 start. So, there's chances, but it is a big game for both teams, for sure.
And any of the rest of these schedules stands out. The Wotown Showdown.
Hartley is #1 in the state in Division 3, and they're playing Chaminade Julian, and I believe they're number 6. I believe they're number 6.
That's a big time.
That's a great matchup right there.
And that's over on Zettler this week,
yes,
isn't it?
Yes.
It's at Jack Ryan
Field.
You
mentioned the Wotown Showdown. Thomas Worthington and Kilbourne looking to turn their seasons around. So yeah, it should be exciting to see what happens there. Those matchups are always entertaining.
Yeah, and a lot of things do get thrown out the window. You can never really take anything for granted when these kinds of rivalries go. We are going to get out of here. We will talk to you again next Tuesday afternoon at 4 p.m. We'll figure out the site later in the week. We will share that via social media. For Cruisers coach Bryan Schoonover and for Jarrod Ulrey, I'm Dave Purpura. So long, everybody.